Thank you. Thank you. You may be seated. If everyone knew all the things that took place in my life on this campus, not everyone would be standing and applauding, I'm sure. I promise I can take you places on this campus that you did not know existed. Promise. It's good to be back on the hilltop. It's good to be a part of this special occasion of the Missions Convention. It's humbling to be in this place. I look at some of those that I have worked with the last couple of days, and I'm thinking, wow, they should have tapped them on the shoulder for this particular service, and yet it has fallen to be my responsibility, and I trust the Lord will help us together as we talk about a few things about a life of missions, but far more than just a life of foreign missions, but a life of service. You know, I have really appreciated the themes and how they have been integrated by God Himself, because we didn't know exactly what everyone else was going to be doing. And as I've gone from session to session, it's just amazing how it all dovetails together. And that's reassuring, because it helps you to understand that we have found the mind of Christ for this convention as a whole. And you hear the same kind of concepts again and again and again. And I certainly thank all of those that have been involved, and all of you students. Boy, I stand here and look out over a group of young people like this, and my heart quickens, and I begin to rejoice in my soul, because thank God there are still a lot of young people that have a desire to wholly follow God. And I can see that in your faces. I've watched you. I've watched your life in the last couple of days. I've watched your interaction with each other and with authority and all of that, and learned a lot. I've been in youth ministry the majority of my ministry, and I will complete 36 years in a little over a month of full-time ministry. And you learn to read young people, and there's a good group here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your heart for the work of God, and thank you, Brother Glick, and all of those that are involved. You're doing a good job, and we certainly appreciate it. My mind went a lot of different directions as I was thinking about this service, and the thing that I enjoy is stories. I enjoy reading stories and listening to stories and telling stories, and Lord willing, we will get to some of that. But there are some foundational things that are very, very important. One of the things that keenly concerns me is the fact that for many years we had the idea that to really minister, you had to be either a preacher or a foreign missionary, or maybe we could squeak in a Christian educator there, but we were sort of limited. What I want to tell you today is, starting right up here with this young lady and going all the way back through this side, and with this young man, and going all through here and in the sides over here, and all of us up here on the platform, every single one of us have a place to fill in the cause and kingdom of Christ. That is ministry. That is missions. Our mission is to proclaim the glorious message of the gospel. And it really doesn't make that much difference to me whether you're in Europe or in India or down in South America or any place else, or right here in Cincinnati. There is a job that needs to be done for the cause of Christ right here. And we have been tasked, or given the task of finding those opportunities and fulfilling those opportunities, stepping into that void and making a difference with the message of the gospel. So if you're not called to foreign missions, don't sit there and say, well, this doesn't apply to me today, because it does apply to you. This is something far bigger than any foreign field. This is the message of the gospel. This is the message for which Christ came to earth and died, gave himself completely, that the whole world could hear and understand. And all of us have a responsibility to do something with that message. Now, we have done a very good job of understanding that if we're going to make it to heaven, we have to be a follower of Christ. We know the calling of Jesus. What it's in Matthew and Mark, I believe, both of those gospels, where he calls the disciples. He said, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." And that call is extended to each of you. But it doesn't stop there with just being a follower of Christ. You see, we do a good job of following Christ, giving our heart to him, surrendering our all to him, taking part in, at least in a nominal way, in services and in activities of a spiritual nature. And all of that is important. But there's another step that is very, very, very important. Not only are we called to be followers of Christ, but we're called to be servants of Christ. And that means you, and that means me, and that means everybody. You go to the last chapter of John, I believe it is, where Christ is talking with Peter after his great failure and his great denial. And we make a big deal about that denial. And quite frankly, there's not a one of us that are sitting here that haven't been in his shoes at one point or another. But I want to look at Christ's response to that. And he comes face to face with Peter, and he said, "You tell me that you love me. Do you really love me, Peter?" And Peter said, well, he's not as bold this time as he was last time. Last time he said, "Well, Lord, I'll die for you. All these other guys will desert you, but not me." And now he has seen something in his own life that has changed his perspective of himself a little bit. And it's not near as forceful. And they tell me, if you look at the Greek tenses and all of that, that it's a little more tentative. And he said, "Well, Lord, only you really know if I love you." But Christ comes right back on the heels of that, and he said, "Peter, if you love me, then take care of my sheep. Feed my sheep. Take care of my flock. Nurture and guide and support and deal with the needs of my people." And young people, my message to you is, yes, you have to follow Christ. You have to surrender your life to him. You have to give your all to him. But once that is all done, then you don't find a seat and sit in the bleachers and watch the world go by. Because the next step of every true believer is, what can I do for Christ? How can I make a difference for someone else? How can I share that same message that was shared with me? So we need to be followers of Christ, but we need to be servants of Christ as well. Now, when they asked me to talk, I struggled, because immediately the scripture that the Lord put on my mind was something that I at least touched on 4 years ago or so, when I spoke in a chapel when I was on deputational tour, and I said, "But Lord, I've already touched on some of that." He said, "No, that's what I want for this morning, so I don't apologize. I want you to look at Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 to 30. We won't read all of those verses. In fact, Brother Tim made reference to this very thing. This is the story about the master who left and went to a far country, and he divided his riches and his possessions and everything that he had. He divided them among his servants. And this is a Bible school, and they teach how to preach properly, and so I want to give you a little outline here so we can cover that, and then we will launch off of that and into some practical applications of it. But you remember, the master was leaving, beginning with verse 14. "For the kingdom of heaven is as a man traveling into a far country, who called his own servants," the word "his own servants" is very important, "and delivered unto them his goods. And unto one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, to every man according to the several ability, and straightway took his journey. Then he that had received the 5 talents went and traded with the same, and made them 5 other talents. And likewise he that had received 2 talents, he also gained other 2. But he that had received one went and digged in the earth and hid his Lord's money. And after a long time the Lord of those servants cometh and reckoned with them. We will stop the reading there. It goes on over to verse 30, and you can reference that later. First of all, the thing we notice is that every single person received a talent. Everybody. Now, that means that includes you. If you're a follower of Christ, God has given you an ability to do something for him. All right? It's very important that you understand, I have a responsibility because I'm a follower of Christ. Everyone received talents. Now, all of these servants belong to this man. That's why I'm saying if you're a follower of Christ, if you belong to him, then he gives you the ability to do something for him. Now, the thing that immediately jumps out is not everyone received the same number of talents. Now, in a politically correct world, we go nuts with that real fast because that's not fair. So I need to take from 5 and give to number 1, and 5 and give to those that have 2. And suddenly, the thing about it is that's absurd because that's not life. That's not reality. That does not happen. Never. Not even in a politically correct society, because the ones that are taking from me and giving to poor people, and they that are taking retain what they have. So not everyone received the same thing. But there are 2 very important factors. The one who does the dividing is the master himself. And it goes on and clarifies it there in verse 15, that the master, knowing you because you belong to him, knowing you because he created you to begin with, knowing your limitations, knowing your strong points, knowing your faults, knowing your failure. Do you know that God knows all of that about you? He knows every detail. And knowing you like only he can know you, he has given you certain talents and abilities. And he's the one that decides who gets what. And verse 15 says that each received according to his ability to handle it. All right? So immediately they say, well, he got 5 and I got 1, so he's more important. No, because it doesn't consider the level of the talents that are given. Because that one talent may be to the president of the United States or the president of God's Bible School. And the other talent may be to clean toilets and to wash windows and to help those that are hurting. You see, because every talent stands on its own. And it's not, the thing that you need to understand, young people, is this is not a comparison one to the other. It is not a competition. We're all working for the same cause. And that is do our best to get as many people as we can to heaven. And all of us have a part. So forget about looking at your neighbor and saying, he's got more than me. I used this someplace, I can't remember where, and I grew up in a family of 6 kids. And my mom was so busy, she didn't have time to play games. And someone would give us a bag of candy, and she'd tear the top open. She would pour a handful and give it to Steve and to Francis and to Daryl and to David and to Linda and to Danny and all of us. And what's the first thing we did as kids? Especially my sister Francis and I were only a year apart, and I began to count and she began to count. Mom, that's not fair. She got 7 and I got 6. I need another one. My mom says, look, I don't have time for this. Do you want candy or do you not want candy? Said, if you want candy, take it and go and be happy with it. If you don't, give it back and I'll give it to the rest of them. I'm not going to count it out. Your hand was there, I filled your hand. She got more, her hand's bigger. Man, moms have a crazy way of reasoning, don't they? My mom never counted out the candy, and I always counted out the candy. I couldn't read, but I could count because I had 10 fingers. You see, God has given to us according to the abilities that he knows we can handle. So each received talents. Now, each gift included a personal responsibility. It was a gift of faith on the part of the master. He expected you. He expects you to do something with the gift that he's given. It is not just given and you say, oh, that's pretty, and set it up on a shelf and watch the world go by. No, he gave you that because he anticipates, he expects you to use that gift for him and to do something with it. It is a gift of opportunity. He doesn't limit it. He doesn't qualify it. He said, this is your gift. Use it and the sky's the limit. You can win as many people as you want to me. But that's your job. Point people in my direction, and if I be lifted up, I will draw all men unto myself. It's a gift of opportunity. It's a gift of trust. He depends on you. Do you know that God has no other plan by which to take people to heaven than by using broken people like you and like me to do the job that he has given us to do, to spread the wonderful message of the gospel of Jesus Christ? And if we fail, there is no other option. That's serious business. It carries with it a responsibility. And then the third thing is, every talent had its day of reckoning. There comes a point when we stand before God and he asks the question. If I had to title this, I would use this as a title. His question is, ma'am, what have you done with my talent? Sir, what have you done with my talent? How did you use my talent? What is the end result of the gift I gave to you? Now that brings it right home to us. That puts a heavy responsibility on you and upon me, because someday we're going to be there when the master returns. And he says, Rick Hutchison, what did you do with your talent that I gave you? He used it. He used to be my PR man, and I love to hear him preach and talk about the piney woods down in yes. What did you, Bill Marshall, do with your talent? What did you, Steve Stetler, do with the talent that I gave you? Now, here's the thing that I desperately want you to understand as young people. The devil will use anything he can to distract you, to sidetrack you, to divert your attention. And one of the biggest tools that he uses is to get you looking at you and comparing what talents you have and don't have. And then he says, well, that's not fair because you could do that too. And so then we begin to doubt ourselves. And the other thing, then he points out all of this, and then he comes back and then he dumps on us and tells us about how we have no ability and the incompetence that we have, and our level of incompetence is greater than any other one else in the room, and all of this kind of stuff. And he just beats us down and beats us down. And I'm saying, that's a bunch of nonsense. The Lord gave you the ability to do something for him, and you need to understand that. Your number one goal should be to seek God until you, by the help of God, understand the talents and the abilities that God has given you, and then with God's help, you get up off your knees and go out and face a lost world and begin to work in your area of expertise until your dying day, trying to affect every single person that you can for the cause of Christ. Now, I can give you tons of stories. We have a church in Saltillo, Mexico. I lived there for almost 3 years, and it's well organized. We have a 5-talent individual that is pastoring. We have a 5-talent individual that is helping to organize the outreach program, and everyone in that church is doing something. They did a survey, and even the children filled out this survey. From my perspective, what is the gift that God has given me? How can I implement that in this church setting? What would I be willing to participate? If these opportunities came up and they gave a whole list of options, how am I prepared to take part in that? And every single one, even the kids, are involved in that because we have a number 5 talent up on top that is organizing it. But if we had 25 talents, we have 25 different ideas of how it needs to be done. So God only gave a few people that kind of talent. But to incorporate that, there's a whole lot of people with 2 talents and 1 talent, and those that feel like they have no talents, because all of us begin to take part and we begin to organize things. Right now in that church, the young people have banded together under the leadership of another person that's well organized, and they are in the process of planning a church by themselves. They do the calling. They take up money and cook food and sell it to raise money to fund it. They have gone out and passed out tracts. They have knocked on doors. They're doing calling. They're holding their own services. They provide the music. One of them preaches. They do it all. They're in the process of planning a brand new church. It's not someone that has 50 years on them. Some of those are 12 and 13 years old. The leader is just turned 22. I'm talking about there is a job for us to do, and we need to find it. All of us have something that we can add to the cause of Christ. But see, not everyone's a part of the youth group. So we have ladies that do things. We have a man that goes to that church. His name is Amigo. He's missing 2 or 3 French fries in his Happy Meal. All right, he's a great guy. He's nice as can be. Well, I won't go into any more detail. He's a great guy, and he has a passion for Christ. I'll tell you what, he'll put some of us to shame. We sit there and we have a good, clear mind, and we can think and we can reason, and we've been trained, and we have some resources, some money that we can do something with, and we say, well, there's just nothing I can do. And here's a man that's simple, and all he knows is that God transformed him and saved him from sin, and that he wants to do something for him. And he came up to me and he said, hermano, he said, I need tracts. He said, I see people everywhere that don't know Jesus, and I need to tell them, but I'm not very good with words. But if you can get me tracts, he said, I can pass those out. I gave that man tracts, and he went through 2,000 tracts in 10 days. He's a simple man, but he's smart enough to know that there are people that are going to miss heaven. And if he doesn't do something, he's got a responsibility because he loves the one that saved him. And he said, sir, I've got to do something. I can't find the words. Give me some tracts and I'll pass them out. And he goes back and he follows up with those people. He's brought some people to church. He's probably a number 1 there as far as the talents and the abilities. But God is using him in his simple way to spread the glorious message of Jesus Christ. Sir, ma'am, what is your excuse? Oh, but I'm simple. Can you pass out a tract? There's another lady. She's 70 years old. She can't even read and write. She can't write her own name. She's a mother of like 10 to 12 kids. Faithful lady. She's always at church. She fell and hurt her arm, and now when she tries to shake hands, she's so stiff because she didn't have money to go get it checked and get it fixed at the hospital. But she wanted to be involved and do something. The lady can cook. I was there, 2 or 3 weekends ago, and we had pozole and other things like that. Those of you that are Latin know what that's all about. We had the green kind and the red kind, and man, it was delicious. I love to go to her place and eat. And she said, I can't read and I can't go. The ladies were working and organizing some kind of outreach themselves. And down in Mexico, the hospitals, most of them don't provide food for people. The families have to bring it in. And you go there and you're sick, and the families come in and they'll spend a lot of the day there in the room with you, but they bring your meals in and all. And the ladies started this thing. They would go in and pass out tracts. They would go in and talk to people and say, look, do you have any prayer requests? Is there some way that we can help? Can we pray for you? How can we help? We're here to minister to you. But a lot of those were new faces and they didn't know them. And so this lady who could cook, she said, you know what? I've got an idea. And she began to fix tacos. She began to fix gorditas. She began to fix all kinds of simple foods like that. And she would load them up in big vats and put them in the back of her son-in-law's van. And they would go down to the hospital, and outside they set up a little tent. And they set up this table and they said, look, any of you that are in the hospital, they go door to door in the hospital. They say, you know, we're from such and such a church up on Boulevard Hidalgo, and you're welcome to come by and get a free taco or get a free gordita and get some chips and salsa. It's right outside the door. You can come. And by the way, while we're here, do you have anything you want us to help you pray about? Do you have any interest? We have some ladies that would like to read the Bible. Would you like for us to read some scripture? How about having prayer with you? You know what? It works. It's working like a charm right now in Saltillo. But you know what opened the door? It wasn't a number 5 level that opened the door. It was another number 1 level. The taco opened the door. And they received the taco, and they were grateful in their moment of difficulty that someone was reaching out to them. And you give me a taco, and then they say, can I pray with you? Well, yeah. You mind if I eat while you pray? Yeah, help yourself. Any more tacos? What is it? It's someone that is serious about this business of winning people to Christ. He said, look, I've got to do something. There are people that are lost. I can't read, but I can cook. And she cooks tacos, and she does that every week. And they go down there. They've had people come into the church. They've had people that they've prayed with and have gotten saved and gone back to their home, and they've never seen them again. But what I'm talking about, young people, is somehow we got to get beyond this just being a follower of Jesus Christ and understand that we have a responsibility to be a servant of the living God. What a privilege. What an opportunity. But at the same time, what a tremendous responsibility, because at the end of things, you're going to stand before the Master when he returns. And his question is, what have you done with my talent? Oh, man. Can we unplug that clock? No, we better not. We have another man down. He's a little short, sawed-off guy. I talked to him. I referred to him in my session the other morning, and his name is Cuco. That's what we call him, and he's a lot of fun. He's a great guy, but I have never, ever, ever seen a man that is more tuned into the ministry than Cuco. He is always, always, always ready to do something for God. He was born down in a place called Cuchicuato, down in Guanajuato, the state of Guanajuato in Mexico, and it is the center of Satanism in Mexico. And he went right into the little town that is the headquarters for the Satanistic worship. And he began to build a church. I talked to him here a couple years ago. I said, Cuco, why in the world did you pick a place there? And I'll never forget, he doesn't cry very often, but he got big old tears in his eyes, and he said, oh, hermano. He said, I wanted to build a church at the very gates of hell so people could understand that they didn't have to go there, that there was an answer, that there was a remedy. We bought him a tent that was supposed to seat about 250, 300. He has these big outdoor evangelistic campaigns. He'll put 500, 600 in there. We bought him the biggest set of speakers that I could get into Mexico, and he maxes those out. And he always says, "Oh, brother," he said, we gotta turn it up. He said, "There's other people that can't hear." I was there, and I sat in my car for just a moment in the middle of one of those camp services, and I just began to look around. I counted 61 people that were not at the service, but they were standing behind the curtain. There was a group of men that were sitting there drinking beer, and what I noticed is that slowly, so no one would notice, they rolled the windows down so they could hear. There were ladies that came out and began to sweep the front walk in front of their house, and they were acting totally disinterested, but they were listening to the message of the gospel. And Cuco's heart burns in it, and he's not looking. He'll reach out to anyone. But the ones that he really has a passion for are those that are broken and hurting, those their lives are destroyed and messed up. I go and take a picture of all the drunks and the prostitutes that I can find because I want the before and after picture, because I know some of them are going to touch God in this camp meeting. He just baptized 15 brand new converts from his last camp, and he had 5 or 6 more that he hadn't baptized yet. And I'm not talking. I went to an anniversary service in Pedregales. They had just celebrated 25 years down where Brother Manuel is, and that's a big celebration, and people came from all over, and Cuco rented a bus on Sunday morning. He pulled up, and I was out there with my camera as people were getting off, and it was the motleyest looking crew that you've ever seen. I mean, there were some rough looking people that got off there. There was a man and wife that had been alcoholics for years, and God had wonderfully saved them in the past. They're 2 of the 2 that got baptized here recently. They still look rough, but God has transformed them down on the inside. But you see, Cuco, God gave him the ability to look beyond the surface and see that heart that was broken, but see that God is able to reach down into it. I wish I had time to talk to you about all of that. There was a woman that had been involved in prostitution since she was 7 years old. She wasn't dressed all that good. I took a picture of different ones. I took a picture of her. When I put it up on my computer, I deleted it, because it just wasn't something that I want to bring to God's Bible School and show all of y'all. But she was coming out of prostitution. They had a building project there in Cuchicuato, and they were adding a 2nd floor to the parsonage because they didn't have Sunday school rooms. They would go out and gather under the trees, and it's a happening place, and they had a lot of kids and a lot of young people, so they've gone into this, and they won't let me give them money. And they said, no, it's not your responsibility. It's an agreement between us and God, and when he provides, we'll build. And so they were building, and this lady had just gotten saved. She had been saved about 2 weeks when I saw her. And she said, oh, hermano, she said, I'm so glad for what God's doing. And she gave me her testimony, and then she began to cry. She said, you know, we were having this building project, and she said, I wanted to do something. She said, but when I got saved, I lost my job. I was a prostitute. I didn't know how to give anything. She said, when I walked away from that, I determined that never again would I ever sell my body for anything. She said, looked in my eyes, and her eyes were just flooded. She said, but I would have for him, because he made such a change in my heart. She was ready, prepared to go out and sell herself as a prostitute to get enough to give an offering for the building project at church. Why? Because God had transformed her life. And Pastor Cuco and his wife Rosa showed up, said, oh no, you don't ever have to do that again. She loved to bake, and she had this one thing that she baked, and they brought her supplies so she could bake it and go out and sell it, and she was rejoicing. She said, I've given 2 offerings already, and I have enough to buy some more supplies, and I think I'm just going to cook for the rest of my life so I can tell people about Jesus. What is your excuse, sir? What is your excuse, ma'am? Has God done nothing for you? No, he's redeemed you, and it compels us to go out and see the lost and see the broken and get down where they are and wrap your arms around them. Oh, but they stink. Sure, they stink. They're head over heels in sin, but you have the remedy. You can lead them out of that. You can take them to Christ, introduce them to him, and watch him transform their life. I'm talking about the responsibility that we young men have of being an example, of being a leader, of doing something for God, getting off of our seats, getting out and beyond the walls of the church and seeing the reality of crushed and broken lives of those that are lost in sin. What are you doing with his talent? There was another little man, Reynaldo, got off that bus. He had tattooed tears coming down out of his eyes. He had a big scorpion that started here in the middle of the back of his neck and wrapped all the way around his throat. Tattoos all over, cuttings all over. He had been involved in gangs. He should by all rights be dead. It's simply the fasting and intercessory prayer of Kuko that stood in the way. When he tried to get out of the gang because he gave his life to Christ, they beat him and left him for dead. When they got him to the hospital, the doctor said, there is no way. He should have been dead minutes ago. We put more blood in his body than his body should be able to handle. But Kuko got on his knees. He knew Reynaldo was going, and he and a whole group of people from church were fasting and interceding for Reynaldo. Reynaldo came to the service, and in those celebrations, they just open it up. If someone has a special that they want to sing, it's a celebration. So come, let's sing. We had nine specials that night, and we hadn't even got to the people that they had hired to come and sing. And the specials were awful. I mean, they were special to God, but they weren't so special to the service. And Reynaldo got up there, and he's a little bitty short, and he said, I just want to sing for the honor and glory of God, and he took off. I think he sang in at least 4 keys, and none of the notes were on pitch. He started off way too high, and he couldn't reach it. And so he'd be up on his tiptoes and screeching up. And they have the microphone just spiked as loud as it'll go. And he was screeching, and I was grinning. And I whipped out my cell phone and took a little video. And I thought, oh, I got to show Kent. And then he stopped. And he said, I'm not very good at this singing. He said, but God just saved me. And I've got to do something. I've got to do something. He said, look at my face. You see the tattoos and the marks. He said, you know what this face is? He said, this face is a picture of grace. God has transformed me down on the inside. He said, I've got to do something, so I sing. And the Lord said, Steve, you need to delete that video. That was his offering to me. That was from the wellspring of a heart that had been set free from sin. He had to do something. He had to sing. Could he sing? No, he couldn't sing. He couldn't sing a lick. Brother Crater would never chosen him to go out on the road with a quartet. In fact, he wouldn't even let him in the choir. They would never have him up here to lead singing on any given chapel service. I can almost guarantee that. But he had to do something because of the grace that had transformed. I'll never get away from that picture of grace. This face that is so marred by the habits of sin that we would turn away and say, oh, that's nasty looking. But he looks in the mirror and he sees grace and what God can do. Young person, what is your excuse for not doing something for Christ? What are you doing with this talent? Oh, but I only have one. Did you bury it? What are you doing? Let me take you to the next man that got off. Big, strapping. He's my size. His skin is real dark. He was the head warlock in that area. His name is Fidel. Kuko has worked with demon possession and all kinds of stuff for years. He told me, he said, Fidel and his wife, they got saved. I had the privilege of giving them their very first Bible. But his wife never broke her ties with the people that provided her with drugs, and it wasn't long until she went back. They have 7 children, I think, and she took off, and Kuko said, this couple are the most wicked people I have ever dealt with in my life. And what happened? God reached down into that wicked heart and transformed it by redeeming love and grace. Fidel was at that anniversary service. He came off, and all 7 of his kids were all spiffed up. They sat up on the front row, Fidel was there. He's the first to be there at a 5 o'clock prayer meeting. He's the last one to leave. He's volunteering all the time. Brother Kuko, anything else that needs to be done? Anything else I can do? And Kuko said, well, you've done enough. He said, oh, no. He said, I have such a debt to repay to the one that saved me and transformed my life. He said, I'll never be able to do enough to repay that. He got saved about 2.5 years ago. I gave him a brand new study Bible. He came up to me with tears in his eyes. He said, oh, hermano. He said, I have read through this. I think he had read through it like 6 or 7 times, something like that, and studied, and it was falling apart. He said, I've lost more than a dozen pages. I'll never get them back. I don't know where they are. They've fallen out somewhere along. And then he brightened. He said, maybe someone will find them and read about Jesus. He said, is there any way you can get me another study Bible? I got one on order. I'll be going down to see him next month, and I'll take him a brand new Thompson Chain Study Bible in Spanish. What is it? I'm talking about God has gifted us. God has given us a spot in his cause and kingdom. And my question is, what are you doing with his gift? All of us. Every one of us in here will have to answer that question. Now, what happened on the day of reckoning? The master came back and he called for the man with 5. The man said, you gave me 5, sir. I did my best, and I was able to gain 5 more. And the master said, you should have gained 10. Is that what he said? No. What did he say? Someone tell me. Well done. What? Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Well done. He called the one with 2. And he said, you gave me 2, and I worked hard. I did my best. I tried to be faithful. I got 2 more. And he said, you dummy. Why didn't you get 5 more like him? You didn't work as hard as he did. Evidently, you slacked on the job. Did he say that? No. No, he didn't say that. What did he say? Well done. The same thing? That guy only got 2. The other guy got 5. Let me go back to where I started. It's not a competition. It's not a comparison. He's saying, what did you do with the talents that I gave you? Did you use them? Yes. I did my best to use them. Well done. Enter into the joy of the Lord. The only condemnation came with the one who only had 1. Why? Because he did nothing. He went out and buried it. No one was looking. He buried it. And he never breathed a word, never told anyone that he had a talent. He sat in church, and when they asked for volunteers, he never volunteered. When they said, can you sing a special? No, I can't sing a special. Could you go knock on? No, I can't. Could you drive the van? No, I can't. Never could do anything. You see, he didn't want anyone to know that he had a talent given to him by God. He hid it. What was he doing? Oh, I'm preserving it. Because, see, when he comes back, he's going to demand something of me, and I'm going to make sure that I have it intact, ready to give it back to him. So he heard the master was coming, and he ran out and dug it out, got his hanky out, and he polished it up, and it was shining brightly, just perfect, like new, never been used. No one even knew he had it. And when he said, sir, what have you done with my talent? He said, here it is. I saved it for you, and I'll give it back. And what did he say? Thou wicked and slothful servant, you knew I would demand a return, and you did nothing with my talent. I didn't give it to you so you could give it back. I gave it to you so you could use it to bring others into my kingdom. He didn't care if the hinge is broken and it's bloody and it's scarred up and you can't read the writing on it anymore. It's obviously been through the war, because sir, if you are using the talent that God has given you to use, it will be bloodied because it's a war. It's a battle. There will be pain. There will be suffering. There will be sweat and tears. There will be agonizing. That's a part of the job. But Christ went to the death for us. And then he gave us the ability and gave us the opportunity to do something to give back to him. He said, I don't want my talent back. I wanted the fruits from the talent I gave you. And you show up empty-handed, thou wicked and slothful servant. Folks, we're talking about the bottom line here in ministry. It's not about going to China, and it's not about going to Mexico, and it's not about going to any other place. It's about what you do when God intersects your life on a daily basis with those that don't know him. Have you left any impact on their life? Have you done anything, made any effort to make a difference for the cause of Christ? Do they have any clue about God once they have gone on their way? And folks, every single one of us live right there. We meet people on a daily basis, out on the street, our favorite fast food place, the place where we fill up our car, where we work. It happens all the time. We run to Crow Ghetto. Can't do that now. It's going to be nice when it gets done. I was by there yesterday. You go over there and you buy your food, and God brings some benighted college student that has never had the opportunity that you have. And you look at them and say, ooh, they look funny. Of course they look funny. They don't have a clue. They smell funny. Of course they smell funny. They've probably been drunk all night. What did you do to make a difference? And that's my message to you. What did you do with the master's talent when you stand before him? What will you tell him?